Welcome back to Clean for Profit. I appreciate you stopping by today. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than it has been in the past. We're just running a solo episode today. I want to start this podcast by just telling you my story so far, not because I think it's anything special, but because if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that you'll see parts of yourself in it. I didn't wake up one day knowing that I wanted to start a window cleaning business. I didn't have any kind of a master plan when I began, and honestly, it all kind of started by accident to begin with. So back in 2017, I was living in Bend, Oregon, which is a moderately sized town in Central Oregon, and I applied for a window cleaning job on Craigslist. At the time, I just needed work. And on my first day, I climbed a real ladder, embarrassingly enough, for the first time. Not a step ladder, but like a legitimate extension ladder. I'd always done blue collar work with my dad growing up, things like junk removal, basic construction, handyman stuff. But to me, this was different, and working on a ladder felt pretty sketchy at first. And then over the next 9 months, I was exposed to all kinds of work in the window cleaning space that I'm sure you're familiar with: residential, commercial, a couple of different storefronts, different home sizes, and really high standards. Most importantly, I learned a lot from the owner of that business. He cared deeply about the quality of work. He cared about showing up when you said you would. He cared about systems, and at the time, I didn't realize what that even meant. And most importantly, and more than anything, he cared about his people. He wanted to really foster a culture of growth and accountability. And that was really formative for me as a young man. At the time, I'm 31 now. And when I took that job, I was 21, 22. And at one point, not one point actually, multiple points, he recommended that I read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It took a while for me to actually do that, but when I did, that book completely changed how I looked at work in general and the difference between being an employee and a business owner. And not just working harder, but thinking differently, thinking in a systems first way instead of a just get the job done kind of way. And after I read that, it kind of pierced the veil for me, and suddenly his standards made a lot of sense. Not too long after that, my dad broke his back, unfortunately, and they lived on 5 acres at the time in California, and I decided to move back to California to help my parents out. When I got there, I decided to start a window cleaning business of my own, and I went straight to postcards for marketing to high-end neighborhoods and big houses. I just thought the bigger the better in terms of houses. I still kind of think that in a lot of ways. And they hit pretty hard. At the time, I was charging $4 per pane, interior and exterior, which is hilarious looking back. But it was relatively competitive pricing at the time. And for a while, it did pretty well. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life as a young man. I had the feeling that I needed to learn how to work with my brain instead of my body. And I had understood the thesis of the E-Myth, but wasn't sure if I wanted to continue on with building a really big window cleaning business. And a lot of this came, at least partly it came, because of what happened with my dad and his broken back. So I spent the next couple of years enjoying window cleaning, but I also wanted to take a shot at trying to do some more white collar work. So I took a job in sales, and around that time, my wife got pregnant with our first child. So there was a lot going on with that. Shortly after the arrival of our first son, we decided to move back up to Central Oregon because her family lives up north, and we still weren't sure what we wanted to do with our lives, with where we were going to be living long term. We decided at the time that we wanted to branch out of what was our hometown and, give her parents a chance to be close to the kids, visit more often, etc. And once again, up there, I started the window cleaning business from scratch. This time, I tried a couple of different things. I tried postcards first, and they had pretty minimal success. But one thing that I've started doing consistently at this time is posting organically to Nextdoor. And compared to the first time that I started the business, Nextdoor absolutely crushed. We lived up in Central Oregon for almost 4 years, and that's all that I did for marketing. I made a very intentional decision not to grow beyond a one crew operation. So it was me for a lot of the time, solo. And then for like the latter half of us living up there, it was me and a buddy. And we ran hard and did really well for being like an owner operator business. Together, the two of us over that time span, we had many months that were north of $20,000. It was really simple. It was definitely physical. It's not easy work, but it was also really tangible, which is the thing that I've always appreciated most about window cleaning in particular, is that you can see the progress that you're making. I learned a lot up there about building trust in a small community. And that was the main thing that accelerated the business in that market. But being a one-man crew really wore me out, as a lot of solo operators probably know. I still, for whatever reason, had this inkling that I didn't want to scale the window cleaning business, mainly because I got, in 2018, 2019, I got a hernia that I had to get operated on, which was a bummer. And that kind of cast doubt on I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out in terms of growing the window cleaning business. While all of this happened, I decided that I wanted to become a software engineer. I spent about 8 months trying to learn it seriously. And what I learned is that I'm not quite built to be a full-blown software engineer. I ended up getting a job as a WordPress developer at a marketing agency. I was building websites for all kinds of clients, learning a ton about SEO, learning best practices online in general when it comes to running ads, setting up Google profiles, etc. You're probably sensing a theme here of me going back and forth, and I've constantly done that over the last decade or so. My 20s was, in terms of work, defined by me constantly teetering between trying to figure out the desk job thing and loving being outside, building my own business, and doing tangible work. But during that time, I got pretty good at building websites, and I learned a lot about business automations, about internal business systems, and how businesses actually run from the digital side behind the scenes. Once again, we found ourselves in an emerging situation that we had to figure out. The house that we were renting was going to be demolished. They were developing on that property. And around that time, my parents called to ask if we wanted to buy their house. They were moving to a second home that they purchased, and we jumped on the opportunity. We really love that area, so we said yes. And so once again, we moved back down to California, where I grew up. And once again, I started the business from scratch. And this time it was hell. It sucked. The postcards didn't hit. We moved down in the off season, so it was really slow to begin with. Nextdoor posts, which I thought would for sure work because they worked so well in Central Oregon, was slow. And then the kicker is that when I changed my information on my Google business profile, it got suspended. And that suspension turned into an 8-month fiasco, which was just terrible. There was 8 months with no Google traffic, 8 months of uncertainty about whether it would ever be back up and I would have a business, 8 months of trying to keep up momentum without a small business's most important lead source. I didn't know what to do. And so eventually I found help with that. I dragged my feet on it for a little while, but during that time, when my Google business profile was suspended, I leaned really hard into what I did have control over, which is using what I had learned from my WordPress web development job and focusing on building long-term leverage online. I worked a ton on the website, completely redesigned it. I focused on SEO and content development, and I made sure that when the profile came back on digitally, I was prepared for that. And that ended up happening after 8 months. It finally got reinstated. And yeah, like I said, when it did, things moved pretty fast. We went from 9th position in our market to 3rd in a matter of a couple of months, which represents a big jump. And a huge percentage of our business started coming from organic search, which was an awesome win after that drawn out Google business profile suspension. By the way, if you ever find yourself running into a Google business profile suspension, First off, reach out to me. I have some tips for sure. I can't get it unsuspended for you. Google is incredibly finicky, but I would hire it out as soon as possible instead of trying to figure it out yourself. I spent way too long trying to figure it out. And I hired one professional and it got taken care of. We had to do some re-verification, but it ended up working ultimately. If I were to go back into the beginning of that 8 months, I would have just done that on day one. But that work that I did online compounded, and online referrals and referrals from clients started piling up. And ultimately, despite all of those obstacles, 2025 ended up being our second biggest year ever. And that's with momentum really only picking up late into the season. Our Google Business Profile got reinstated early summer. So, I mean, we were talking like mid-May when it got reinstated. Which is awesome. It makes me incredibly optimistic about 2026. The plan is to push hard early into the season, which we're in now. We're currently executing on an aggressive door hanger strategy in a new market that we don't have a lot of market penetration into because it's a little bit outside of our primary service area, but it's a big enough market to really invest into. I mentioned this in a previous podcast with Dave, but with the momentum that we're trying to build in that city, I think we could probably double our revenue from 2025 just in that new market. So ignoring all repeat work and past clients that we've helped before. So we're doing the aggressive door hanger strategy, and we're layering Facebook ads on top of that. And finally, hiring a technician who can be trained into a lead and then ultimately an operations manager. That should put us in a really great position to hire more techs and build something really solid, something that I'm not completely crucial in for the ongoing operations of the business. So I'm sharing all of this because I know a lot of you are kind of in that in-between phase. You like working with your hands. You also want the leverage that owning a business comes with, and you want more than anything control over your destiny, control over your income, control over your schedule. And you don't want to destroy your body forever, but you don't want a soul-sucking desk job. I went through all of those, and I'm just here to tell you that you can build this kind of a business for yourself. You don't have to be stuck being a technician forever. And you can build a business, not a job, out of cleaning windows. So I think that when a lot of people hear what you can make, like when people hear episodes with Dave and I, especially hearing Dave's story, in 2026, they're aiming to make $700,000 in revenue, and he's 2.5 years in. It's like, how the heck can you do that cleaning glass? And the reality is that you can, because once you work yourself out of a technician role, you open yourself up to doing higher income activities that relate specifically to generating more business for your company. And so for some people, that's just not their personality. They don't want to build a business. They enjoy cleaning windows and they want to do it long term. That's totally cool too. But you can build this business into whatever you want, which is one of the more beautiful things about owning your own home service business. Is that if you want to be a solo operator or have one helper for forever, rock and roll. And if you want to build something to 7 figures that runs without you, you can totally do that too. I would encourage you who are currently working a job and cleaning windows on the side to try to pick what you want to build as early as possible, because that will inform the actions that you need to take that aren't directly contributing to the day-to-day operations that will benefit you most in the long term. Anyways, if that sounds like you, if you're trying to build a large business in window cleaning, or if you love doing the technical work and you want to build something that's sustainable, you're in the right place. This podcast is about building real service businesses. And we're trying to have honest conversations about what actually works with real operators. And that's what we'll keep doing here every single week. And so thanks for listening. I just wanted to take a moment to provide you more context with who I am, Colby, so that when you hear me talk, you know the position that I'm coming from. I'm really excited for 2026. I mentioned this in a previous episode, but we're focusing, of course, on growth. But the main thing that we're focusing on is kind of growing up in our business, to be honest, looking the part. I've run a long time with a single vehicle with a magnet on the side. And by the time spring hits, uh, it's the goal to have a ProMaster City van with a full wrap that looks beautiful, so that when we pull up to a client's house and when we make posts or run ads on social media, we look as legitimate as we are. You know, I've been doing this for a while. I know how to clean windows. I also know how to train people to clean them, but it's time for us to start looking the part. So, anyways, I will stop ranting. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope it provided a little bit of encouragement and mainly just some context on who I am and where I'm coming from. So, these are the early days of this podcast. We're posting every single Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific. And so, if you're listening to this, I really appreciate you being here in these early days. And I'm really excited for what is to come in the long term. So, with that, I will talk to you next week. Have a great one.